All right, I would like to welcome on Tyson from Let's Talk Jets Radio onto the show. What's going on, my man?
What's up, man? How's your off season been, man? We're only talking quarterbacks every day, right?
Yeah, I know. We were just saying before we got started here that it's very quarterback heavy talk right now. We'll get into that in a little bit here and some other things on the Jets. But you're doing something really cool that I wanted to find out some more information on and share with my audience here because I think it's a really great cause. Your run for mental health. I'd like to find out a little bit more. Can you give us some detail here?
Well, first of all, man, I announced this on Friday. You were the first people to reach out to me and say, let's discuss it. So I genuinely appreciate that, man. I did it last year and you helped me as well. So I 1000% appreciate you having me on to even discuss this. This run is a David Goggins challenge with actually harder. It's 4.5 miles every 4 hours for 48 hours. So it's 54 miles in 48 hours, which is kind of crazy. But the goal of this is to raise awareness for our veterans that suffer from PTSD. I'm a striking coach in an MMA gym, and one of the people in my class told me like he uses martial arts as an escape to help deal with his PTSD. So we went in the conversation. He talked about the associations, and he's like, "Do you know that there's been a time where 22 veterans a day commit suicide? 22 a day." I'm like, "That's insane! Like that number. Like, why don't we know about this?" And I started doing more and more research, and you hear about all the trials and tribulations our veterans are dealing with, all the mental health challenges they have, and the problems. So I found an association that's probably 10 minutes from my house. I talked to the guy there and they proactively seek out veterans and talk to them. They say, how do you cope? What do you need? There are all these resources out there that a lot of them don't even know about. So this run, which, is all about that, man. I'm selling shirts. I got 5 great sponsors and I'm trying to raise money. Most importantly, raise awareness. It's not even really, it's about the money to donate to the organization, but it's just share the word that, we have veterans dealing with mental health issues that are very, very serious, and the suicide epidemic is wild. So that's my goal, is to try to raise awareness, raise support for them. Mental health, as you know, man, is something that's kind of like a lot of people are suffering in silence. So you want to break these stigmas. You want to have everybody have an environment where they feel comfortable talking about it, which in a lot of cases, people are scared to talk about it. So that's what I'm trying to do, man. It's going to be interesting. The run's going to be crazy, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, I think it's a great cause and something that I think is a very important topic. And I'm glad that you're bringing the attention to it. Last year it was the 48 miles. How was that? And just your thoughts on going with the little extra. What made you go for that little extra push here?
Last year was crazy. The support I got from everybody, all you guys, social media, everybody else, it was crazy. I never did it before. And it challenges your mind, it challenges your body because you don't really get any sleep for 2 days and you keep pushing yourself. So you got to focus on hydration, nutrition, anything you can to get through it. I had a great support system, my family, it was crazy. This year I'm like, you know what? Let's make it a little bit harder. I'm a big David Goggins guy. He always supported me and he's always like, challenge yourself more. And I'm like, all right, well then let's make this harder to raise more attention and see if you can actually do it. Like there's a point last year, probably like mile like 36. I was really feeling it, man. Like I couldn't get off the couch. I was like, man, I'm cramping up. I'm like, I'm not sure if I can get through this. Like I'm not really sure how this is going to work here. But I'm like, you figure it out. So now I'm like, all right, you train more, you run more, you figure it out. I'm trying to make it harder. And you'll see what happened. Cryotherapy was big. That helped me out a lot. That was what I did to get through the last 8 miles, which was super, super important. But it's an experience, man. It's a wild, wild experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I love, last year you were able to document it and record. I love
Yeah.
watching those videos. So I'm looking forward to that again this year. What day are you doing it? Just wanted to, put that out there as well for people to look,
Yeah,
look.
and for people that are interested, I offer full transparency, man. Every 4 miles, I document it. I'm all over social media. All the donations are obviously they're posted. I post the receipt. I just show everything, man. I'm not shady. It's March 10th to the 12th. So I start 5 o'clock on Friday night and I end at 1 o'clock on Sunday. Like I said, it's all documented. And it's every 4 hours, and it's not like, say if you run at 5 o'clock, it's not like, all right, when you're done with that, you wait 4 hours. It's 5 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 5 o'clock. So if it takes you an hour and a half, tough on you. Like you get less rest. So it's pretty intense, man. But I offer full transparency.
That is so cool. I can't, like I said, I can't wait to see it, and it's a great cause. But while I have you here, I wanted to get some of your takes on the Jets. I love the work you do over at Let's Talk Jets. So just we got to start here with the quarterback position. What's your thoughts on everything going on with Carr this past weekend, and then the Aaron Rodgers drama of if he is or isn't in his darkness retreat, or what the deal is over there?
It's wild, man. Because I talked to you like last year and throughout the season. We're like, it'd be nice to have an offseason where we have our quarterback in place and we can discuss building around the quarterback. But we're here again. And then we go through this roller coaster ride. First, it was we all want Lamar Jackson. Then we want Derek Carr. Then we want Aaron Rodgers. Now, then it's like people are mentioning Tannehill and Mayfield and Stafford. Um, Derek Carr to me is, I'm probably an unpopular opinion here. I like Derek Carr. I think he's it's like you're not giving up draft compensation. I think he's a very good quarterback. I think he'll be fully invested in the team. You're going to get a guy that's like for the next 4 or 5 years. It's like he's consistent. And I think at this point, everybody can find stats to favor the guy they want. You can find stats say, Aaron Rodgers has the MVPs, he has this, he has that. And then you ignore how many years since his last Super Bowl victory, his playoff performances, not coming up, big in big spots. You can find what you want. I like Derek Carr, dude. I think the timeline of all this makes me very, very nervous because Derek Carr was in the building. He left and smart. He's going to, go wherever he wants, go meet the Panthers, everything else. He's going to meet everybody and make a decision. Aaron Rodgers is coming out of darkness. My fear, and I'm sure your fear as well, is that Derek Carr goes to the Panthers, says, you know what? I'm going to stay here. I'm going to sign with the Panthers. Aaron Rodgers comes out of darkness and says, you know what? I want to go to the Raiders. And then what do we do? So that's my fear. The Rodgers thing, I respect him, Hall of Fame talent, great player, a little bit quirky, he's fine. My concern is the compensation, which I think is probably not going to be 2 first, but only coming for a year. Like, are we going to get any assurances it's going to be for 2 years or 3 years? Like, to give up compensation and this money, take on an enormous cap hit. He plays here a year and he's like, you know what? I'm good. I'm out. I'm going back into the darkness again. And then the Jets are screwed. And then we're going to be talking about quarterback next year, right?
Yeah, and then the cycle repeats itself. I get it. It's not an easy decision that Joe Douglas has here. Obviously, their perfect plan was that Zach was going to work out, take that year to leap, and didn't happen. And now you're going into a very important year for both Douglas and Saleh. And I don't know about you, but I think there's pressure on both of those guys to start stacking some wins here and get into the playoffs. Don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, what do you think? Like I understand the Carr Rodgers thing. The Jets have to get a veteran quarterback. We said it. The general manager said it. Woody Johnson said it. We all know it. Zach Wilson probably wants to be traded by now because everybody's already given up on him. But I mean, what do you think though? Do you go for that quick? I consider Aaron Rodgers a quick fix, but it's a short-term fix, and Derek Carr is more of a long-term. Like, how do you look at it?
So I think you have to come away with one of those two guys to me, because I think there's a pretty big drop off once you get past those two, and then you get into the Jimmy G's and Tannehills and Baker and guys like that. And Jimmy could maybe be a little bit closer to Carr, but with his injury history, like that really scares the life out of me. I'd be totally fine if they just said, you know what, we don't want to give up the draft assets. We're going to sign Derek Carr. I like him. I think they'd be able to win a lot of games with him. And I do think he's good enough to, quarterback them to the playoffs and, potentially a Super Bowl. But at the same time, I also think that if they wanted to take that big swing on an Aaron Rodgers and give up the draft capital, I wouldn't blame him for it. I agree with you, what you said earlier too, with you don't think it's going to be two first rounders. I think maybe a second this year and then a conditional first next year if he's back on the roster in 2024, something like that. If that's the compensation going the other way, I'm good with it. I personally don't want to give up pick 13 this year because I think they desperately need an offensive lineman at 13, the best one on the board there. That's what I'd be doing. And like I said, if it ends up being, you know what, we're just going to sign Derek Carr, not worry about giving up any picks, I'm totally fine with that. And I think they'd be, in a really solid spot here in 2023.
Completely agree, man. Once you start talking about Jimmy G and Tannehill and Mayfield, I'm out. Then I'm like, you know what? We're back to playing this circus again.
Yeah, because that's the thing too. Like with those guys who have the injury history, then who knows? By halfway through the season, you could be right back where you were with. All right, now do you go to Mike White or Zach Wilson? It's like, well, we just lived through this not even a year ago. Like it really doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So I think you got to come away with one of those two big guys. That's my take on it.
And the other question I have for you though is, on our show, everybody's like, well, these guys would be excellent guys for Zach Wilson to groom them. I'm like, if you bring in Derek Carr, Zach Wilson's done, dude. Like that ship has sailed, man. Aaron Rodgers maybe, but if Aaron Rodgers is here 2 years, Zach Wilson's going to pick up his 5th-year option. Like, how does that? I don't understand the mindset there.
The only way that I think, like, I agree. I don't think Derek Carr, if Derek Carr comes in, I don't think Zach Wilson's going to sit behind him and like, oh, in 3 years or 2-3 years, you're going to be good to start again. I don't think that would
Right.
be the case. I think they'd be looking to move on, like you said, at some point. With Rodgers, if it's for a year, maybe two at the most, you could start to sell me on it. I don't think it's super realistic, but like there's a chance sitting behind a guy like that and you could rebound a little bit. But it's tough because I don't think you can pick up his fifth year option.
Nope.
So you're kind of, betting on him signing a cheap deal to come back. But if he's just reaching free agency, don't you think he'd want to get his own opportunity
Yep.
somewhere else? It's he's in a really tough spot here himself because I don't think he has any trade value right now.
No.
So I don't see Joe Douglas just saying, I screwed this one up. This is it obviously looks like a bust here at pick 2.
Yeah.
I'm going to cut bait and trade him because what are you getting in return? Maybe a late day 3 pick. Like that
Yep.
doesn't make sense to move him for that either.
Yeah, it's kind of like he's gonna be really tested here, man, because now it's like, is he gonna be classy? Is he gonna be a team guy? Will he be a distraction? How does he handle himself? Because everybody, like, it seemed like his team's moved on from him. He's got to sit here and just like suck it up, you know?
Yeah, he's definitely in a tough spot. So I'm really curious how they, go that route. But I
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you just overall thoughts on outside of the quarterback position, obviously. What areas would you like to see the Jets and Joe Douglas address in, free agency and the draft here coming up?
Well, they have some interesting decisions to make because you have guys like Carl Lawson, who I like Carl Lawson, but the cap number's too high. So would he restructure? Will he stay? Sheldon Rankins, what are you going to do with him? So the defensive line, which is a strength, like everybody keeps saying Jets have a top 5 defense, but you have so many guys that could be gone. You could have Lawson gone, Rankins gone, Quan gone, Quincy Williams gone. You may cut Jordan Whitehead. That's a lot of people to move from your top defense. So the defense, I guess the defensive line is interesting how they handle Carl Lawson, but I think first and foremost for the Jets, it's offensive line, man. You've got to bulk it up. And the interesting thing for me is center because Connor McGovern's a free agent. It sounded like he wanted to come back, but it sounds like the Jets don't want him back. So what is there? Do they go to the draft? Do they go try to find like Corey Linsley for Aaron Rodgers? Like who do they put there to be center? Then who's your left tackle? Is Dwayne Brown coming back? Do you want to put I would consider AVT there if you want to consider that. But how do you do you even trust Mekhi Becton to come back as a starter? Like the most important thing, no matter who your quarterback is the offensive line. And they could have what 3 new starters, maybe? Like, how do you that's interesting, no?
Yeah, I think you hit it on the head. The offensive line is the most important thing that they have to figure out. In no way, I don't think you could say we're going to plan as Mekhi Becton being our starting left tackle in 2020.
No.
I think that's a recipe for disaster. And I hope he proves all of us wrong. I thought he was great as a rookie, but he's just missed way too much time over the last 2 years. If you get anything out of him, you're happy. I think at the absolute best case scenario for him, he's in like a competition for the right tackle spot with Max
Yeah.
Mitchell, like something like that. Because if your plan A is for Mekhi to be your left tackle, then you're taking a massive gamble, one that I'm not willing to take,
Nope.
which is why, like I said earlier to you, at pick 13, I think you just take one of the,
Yep.
top 3 tackles, whichever one is there for you at 13 or whichever one you like the best, you grab him. And then with McGovern, I'm with you. I don't know if the Jets want to bring him back. And if he's due a raise, he's making, I think, $9 million against the cap now. Do you really want to get up and paying him 11, $12 million a year? I don't think I would.
No, and that's the thing. It's like, do you want a guy that this is like the Aaron Rodgers factor. Do you want a guy, if Aaron Rodgers comes here, do you want a guy that kind of caters to him, a veteran guy he's in sync with? But Derek Carr is more of a guy that can be here 4 or 5 years. You can get a younger guy, maybe draft a guy or go a different route there. But it's a huge part. That's the anchor of your offensive line, man. It's something that I agree about McGovern. I wasn't really the biggest fan of him, just the way he handled Zach and how he kind of threw him under the bus and did things that just rubbed me the wrong way. I think he was okay, but the offensive line just struggled for a variety of reasons, injuries, coaching, whatever else. But it's interesting. And left tackle, like you can't trust Mekhi. Dwayne Brown, I'm guessing is going to retire. Like, do we even know what he's going to do?
Yeah, I
Right?
would think he's coming off an injury. He's probably gonna have to get surgery. At that
Yeah.
point, is it worth it to come back and play your age 40 season?
Yeah. Then that's the thing. If Aaron Rodgers comes here, you'd be like, you know what? I'll play with him here. Like
True.
he's your ultimate selling point, right? That everybody, like if Aaron Rodgers is here, CJ Mosley probably restructure, Carl Lawson will restructure, everybody would be one big happy family. You don't know, but it's paramount, man. You've got to get some stability, get some power there. Like I said, I like AVT a lot, but I'm curious to see him at left tackle. He's such a great athlete. He's young, he's athletic. Would they even consider that, or what do they do with him?
Yeah, that's so it's funny you bring that up because earlier this week I did a video on I was diving deep on whether AVT should play tackle or guard, and I really think you can make a good case for either because at guard I think that's where he has the highest ceiling on the
Yeah.
inside, but like obviously the offensive tackle is a much more important position than guard. So would you sign up for maybe a serviceable tackle in Elijah Vera Tucker? And then you find a guard in,
Yeah.
relatively cheap in free agency or in the middle of the draft, and you don't have to spend a premium asset on a tackle?
Yep.
Or do you want that, elite level top 5 guard in the NFL and you
Yeah.
still have that, that tackle
It's
spot?
true.
It's again, that's another one for Joe Douglas that's not an
Yeah.
easy decision. I lean more towards guard, but I get it. If they want to play him at tackle, I think he could handle it. I just think he would be better on the interior.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. It's like, everybody's like, "Oh, go out in free agency, get a left tackle." Well, if you go out in free agency, that's huge money.
Mhm.
And if you want to do that, that's great. But you got to spend huge money on your quarterback. You got to figure out what you want to do with Quentin Williams, and you got to address other holes, which I'm sure we'll talk about. So it's like you can only allocate so much money in so many places. So it's gonna be interesting to see how you do it. In the draft obviously would be huge, man. If you can draft somebody in the first round of 13, that makes life a lot easier. But we'll
Yeah.
see.
I wanted to get while we're on the offensive side of the ball, I want to get your take on what you think the Jets should do with Corey Davis. I feel like that's someone who is potentially someone that they can move on from. It frees up $10.5 million. But
Yep.
if you do that, then what's the next step there?
Interesting player. I like Corey Davis a lot, and then his drops, his injuries, everything else is frustrating. And it's like if you get rid of Corey Davis, I understand it. It's cap space. You're probably getting rid of Barrios too. So now
Mhm.
you're going to get rid of two receivers, and they got to replace both of them. And who like the money spent, you're going to have to spend it on another receiver somewhere. Is it going to be Lazard? Who is it going to be? Like if you deduct, you got to add, and you could be deducting two receivers. So I mean, would he restructure maybe? Can you find a way to keep him at a lesser cost? Because the going rate of receivers now for a guy like him is going to be what, $7 million a year, $8 million a year. That's probably the going rate for like an average receiver, right? Would you try to keep him? And that's the again, if Aaron Rodgers comes here, maybe he would restructure, but you can't keep him at his current rate.
No, you definitely can't. And you mentioned someone in Lazard who played with Aaron Rodgers. So if that's who you end up with, like that wouldn't shock me at all if they
Yeah,
decided to move on from Davis and bring in someone like that. I think they definitely need a bigger body receiver who can block well, which is what Lazard does. But the thing that frustrates me, I think the most with Corey Davis is his availability. He misses a ton of time each of the last 2 years. And then, like you said, you bring up the drops and the penalties in a bad spot. And he has some clutch moments and he's had
yeah,
some big catches for this team. And I think that's what makes it so hard because you see the flashes of it, but it's just not
yeah,
consistent enough for me. So I'm with you. I think you cut him and move on.
yeah.
But then, like, you're probably signing a mid-tier free agent, and then you're spending another draft pick at some point on a receiver.
Now, do you have any faith in Denzel Mims and this new Hackett offense that maybe he can finally come out of the doghouse? Like maybe he could show what he really has since him and LaFleur never like got together.
Yeah, I really don't know what to make of it because there were moments where in his rookie year I thought, okay, like this kid is good.
Yeah,
There's something here. Second year was just a complete disaster. At points this year, it looked like he was maybe starting to turn it
yeah,
around, but I don't think you can go into next year where you're like, this is definitely someone who's a top 3 receiver
yeah,
for us. He could be a starter. I don't have that much faith in him to go to
yeah,
that length, but can he contribute as, a 4th wide receiver, 5th wide receiver on the roster? I think so, and I think he does have upside with his, his size and blocking ability,
yeah.
but just haven't seen it enough consistently where I'm comfortable going, "You know what? Yeah, let's give him a starting role."
Yeah, it's interesting, man. 'Cause you look at the Jets wide receiver group, we thought was kind of like had some depth, but you could wipe out half of it in the offseason, getting rid of Davis and Barrios, counting on Mims. Then you're like, all right, maybe they try to use their tight ends more to kind of compensate for that, but they got to figure out something. You may have to add two receivers, one in the draft and one free agent, you know?
Y Yeah, no doubt there. So, yeah, I wanted to get your, take on that one, and then on the defensive side of the ball, so you started to mention that a little bit. Uh, I'm curious what they do with Carl Lawson. That's someone who you brought up. I like Carl Lawson a
Yeah,
lot, but that freeing up that $15 million is pretty enticing when you have,
yeah,
other needs as well, and also you can create kind of more opportunities for Bryce Huff and Jermaine
yeah,
Johnson and Michael Clemens and those younger guys. who, all Jet fans like and want to see more of, but there's just so many guys on that defensive line there, stuck in the rotation a little bit.
I'm a Carl Lawson fan, man. Great guy, great character, high energy, phenomenal mentor for all these guys too. You figure these guys watch his work ethic day in and day out in the facility, his attention to detail. This is his first probably healthy offseason too, right? Where you're going to probably, if he stays healthy the entire offseason, you're probably going to get a really good year out of him. But at what price? That's the problem. Can you restructure him? Will he stay? Because I like him a lot, but you don't want to take away Jermaine Johnson's reps. He didn't get enough. Bryce Huff was grossly underutilized last year. It drove you insane. So maybe the departure of Lawson, you see these guys flourish. That's going to be really interesting. But I guess the rumor was that in his exit interview, the Jets were kind of talking about him coming back. I guess it just matters to what level. Is it restructured, or is it can't be under his current contract? There's no way.
No. And the same, I kind of grouped these two guys together, although I think there's probably more of a chance the second guy is back even than Lawson. But CJ Mosley, someone who I think they would like to bring back, but just not at that call. His cap hit would be like $21 million next year, which Mosley, nice player, but he's not a $20 million player.
No, 100% not. I mean, I love CJ Mosley, the heart and soul of defense. But, at some point, this cap charge gets ridiculous. And you got to say, listen, man, if you're a team player, let's restructure this, get a bigger signing bonus, however you want to do it. But you got to bring that number down. You have to.
Yeah. And what do you think about that position just in general at linebacker? Because I think Mosley's, he's solid. He's a good player, obviously. But beyond that, I think they could still use some depth at that position, no?
Well, I mean, depth. I mean, they got to figure out what they're going to do. I mean, what do you do with Quan? What do you do with Quincy? And you saw some of the numbers. You never know what to believe in terms of with the new contract. But I mean, what are you paying Quincy Williams to bring him back? I mean, are you giving him $7-8 million a year to bring him back? Does Quan say, you know what? I want not a 1-year deal, which was a bargain this year. I want a 3-year deal. It's Mosley's getting older. I mean, to me, the linebacker position is a concern. Don't you think? I mean, you need youth, you need speed, you need athleticism.
Absolutely. I think that's a position you attack, relatively early in the draft to get some younger guys in here. But, you said it with Quincy, if he's getting like $7-8 million a year, I like Quincy, but I don't know if you're I want to dump that kind of, cap charge into a guy who's probably better in a rotational role than someone who you're relying on as, almost an every down linebacker. So I would probably want to go a younger route if that's what it came down to. If he said, he wants $7-8 million a year, I think I'd have the faith in Robert Saleh, who does, I think, develop linebackers, really well. Just find someone a little younger and cheaper. That's what I would look for, I think.
Yeah, that's where you hope guys like Jamie Sherwood would emerge. Like some of these younger players would come out of kind of take that next step, but you really haven't seen that, So that's definitely that's why everybody keeps saying this top five defense. I'm like, there's legitimately, you could overhaul the linebacker group. And then I guess we could talk safeties if you want, because I'm a Jordan Whitehead fan, dude. And I was ridiculously disappointed. I was waiting for the big impact plays, all these things. All I saw was missed tackles, blown assignments. Him and Joyner were just dreadful at times.
Yeah, I honestly think, Tyson, they need 2 new starting safeties. I would think you move on from Whitehead. That frees up $7.25 million, I think, $7.25 million to move on from him. Joyner is a free agent. Let him walk. But then you're probably going, again, one in free agency, one in the draft. But Whitehead, it was kind of same thing, like a younger player, a younger free agent when he hit the market. I thought, okay, come in, be a steady starter. And at times you saw that, but the missed tackle numbers, really big issue for this team down the stretch.
Especially in clutch moments, man. It was like the big spots of games. It's like the terrible arm tackle, boom, guy's gone, scores. You're like, what? He was here for the exact opposite, the big plays in crunch time to seal off games. He started off all right, but it was like, dude, this is not what we wanted. And it's concerning. And then it's like, you need 2 of them. And this is kind of where, Joe Douglas gets a lot of credit for all the draft moves. He gets the Garrett Wilsons, all that stuff. But it's like the depth at these positions. We're talking about, we need linebackers. We got to go draft them. We need safeties. We got to go draft them. You want these guys on the roster, so they're already here. All right, now you're ready to play at this. We don't really have that. They hope for guys, I guess, probably Pinnock, last year at safety, maybe those younger guys, but it never really paid out. And then you have Will Parks, I guess, which was a guy they kind of like, but you need answers, man. And that's going to be interesting to see how they handle it.
Yeah, so I think there could be, some turnover on that defensive side of the ball with especially those 2 positions. To me, linebacker, safety, corner, you got to feel pretty good with EJ Reed and Sauce and Michael Carter II coming back. But they got to find a way to get get younger, and at linebacker and safety too. One more thing here before we get to something else, but I feel like they got to get linebackers and safeties who can cover, because they have guys who are, solid in the run game. They go sideline to sideline, they make the big plays and come down and make the plays at the line of scrimmage. But how many times, you've watched the Jets for a long time, how many times do we see these guys lose tight ends and running backs in coverage? It's every single week, man.
It's brutal, and you just know it's coming. Like when you do, we all do game previews, and it's always the concern. Watch out for the tight end. Watch out for the running back out of the backfield, and you always see them like they're always like stuck in mud. It's like, why can't we have like the speed on defense? Like you add it in like a Jermaine Johnson, a Bryce Up. You need linebackers, you need safeties, but it's been like it feels like it's been forever for that. Like we never had a pass rusher, which we finally had, but now we need speed at linebacker. We need speed at safety. It's just
it never ends, but.
Right.
So let's say we'll play the game. We'll change it up a little bit. We'll play the game. They land one of Rodgers or Carr in free agency or via the trade. What's your expectation then for the 2023 season, assuming they figure out a quarterback with the veteran in one of those two guys?
Playoffs. Got to make the playoffs. I mean, I think the coaching staff knows that too. I mean, there's too much talent here to keep mailing it in. Like, we can get 7 wins and be happy about it. This team this year should have made the playoffs, and the meltdown at the end of the year is unacceptable. And everybody kind of said, well, injuries and the quarterback and this and that. No, your team fell apart. So now it's like I'm done with this other stuff, dude. Like you bring in a Rodgers or Carr, that's been the missing piece. They even told us that. They literally told us. Woody Johnson told us. Saleh told us. We're a quarterback away. Okay, now you have your quarterback. You have no excuses. So you've got to win 10 games. You've got to make the playoffs. You got to see high level football, because if you don't, they're probably going to get fired. Like, right? You'd think anything less than 8 wins, they're probably getting fired.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And it's funny because I think I tweeted out or mentioned in a video or a stream somewhere recently where I said, if Douglas and Saleh, if they don't make the playoffs next year, they're probably gone. And I got a lot of pushback on it. Said, no, Douglas, he deserves an extension and, this and that. And I really like, Joe Douglas. I think he's done a pretty solid job, but eventually it's got to start translating in the win column here. We could talk about the draft picks, and cap space and, all these trades for so long. Eventually you got to start winning football games.
Yeah. Well, I mean, listen, this is going to come off negative, and I've been getting attacked for this anyway, but I don't care. But Garrett Wilson and Sauce Gardner are saving Joe Douglas's job right now. They are, because he missed on the quarterback, 100% missed on Zach Wilson. The hiring of Saleh, everybody kind of liked, but the Saleh is the way he put together his staff with all the inexperience on the offensive side of the ball was a disaster. Look at the free agents that Joe Douglas has signed. DJ Reed, excellent. Other than that, we're talking about him, dude. Corey Davis, stay or go. Carl Lawson, stay or go. Braxton Berrios, they could all be gone, dude. So Joe Douglas did really good things. The trading of Sam Darnold, the trading of Jamal Adams, but I mean, these guys, this draft class this year with Breece Hall, they're saving him right now. Like nobody's really attacking him because you got rookies of the year. But this year he's got to figure out how to find a quarterback. What is he going to do with Quentin Williams? How does he get him paid and keep him happy? And give this guy a team that they can win with. But if they bomb out, dude, and I was kind of in the boat where it's like, listen, man, Sean Payton wanted, the compensation for Sean Payton, I would have did it. I would be like, you know what? Let's get a proven winner in here and let's turn this thing completely around because I'm tired of losing. But the Jets went this round. They gave Saleh another year at a continuity, which is fine. But dude, listen, if they win 7 games and they have a horrible season, I'd have no problem blowing it all up. I wouldn't even care.
No, I'm 100% with you. And it feels crazy that you get the pushback saying like, oh, they've done all this and that. And I don't know. The free agents, another one, like Gerard Davis was like a 1 hour 1 free agent signing. And now you're going into this is the big one. He's going into his 5th season as GM. And I know he didn't really have a full offseason in 2019. Offensive line's still an issue. All these years later, we're still talking offensive line, man. You got to figure it out.
Yep. No, they spent a lot of money. And I think the thing is our bar was set so low with our previous GMs. Like Idzik was terrible. McCagnon was a joke that you do some levels of competent things and we're calling you a hero. Now he did some decent things. Then this year with the 2 rookies of the year, excellent, but you got to keep building on it. It's got to come down to wins. And, the offensive line is a huge problem. The Mekhi Becton thing, all this stuff, the plan B for Mekhi Becton, how they handle it. This year they've got to be good, dude. They've got to be 10 wins, playoffs. They have to. There's nothing less than that. There can't be, because this team right now, it's hard to sell. Like if you're a season ticket holder right now, before they get a quarterback, you're like, do I even want to go to these games? Like, are you going to sell me what Ryan Tannehill and go watch these teams? Like, I'm not going to deal with that.
No, God forbid. That's what I said, before when, with Carr or Rodgers, if they miss out on both those guys. And like, can you imagine you're going to opening week and on your ticket is a picture of Ryan Tannehill in his Jets jersey, and that's what you're gotta go into the building hyped up for a season? That would be such a letdown to me.
Well, it's funny because the Jets ticket office called me. They're trying to sell me stuff, right? And the girl's she's trying to like, well, we have Sauce Gardner, we have this, we have that. I'm like, that's great. I'm like, who's your quarterback? I'm like, as a fan, like this is the worst time to call is right after the team just. I was down in Miami for that game. I went to a Jets Dolphin game. And it was gross, the grossest football I've ever seen. Like just awful offense, terrible. I'm like 2 days later, the Jets are calling me to try to sell me tickets. I'm like, what exactly are you selling me? Like, what's my experience? Like,
No,
you
and
can't even explain it.
No, and I hate that they raised the ticket prices on the season ticket holders. That's not right. Especially you're 12 years into a playoff drought, and it looked like you finally just had that, turnaround, then that step in the right direction. You dropped 6 games in a row, and then like you said, 2 days after the season it's over. Oh, by the way, we're hiking up the ticket prices after you were screwed over on the PSL and all that stuff. That drives me nuts, and I'll never be a season ticket holder just because of that. Like I couldn't fathom forking over even more money after the slop that they just gave you.
Yeah, and they did it during a winning streak, I think, too, didn't they? When the Jets were doing good and they're flying high, that like the Jets were they're always do money grabs, dude. They do. They've known for it because they've been so bad for so long. If they have a chance to grab it, they do, and it blew up in her face. Because now they look. I felt bad for the girl because she didn't know who I was. Like I'm like she's like some fan, so I'm asking her questions back. I'm like, what about this? What about that? She's like, yeah, well, we got to be positive here. I'm like, you haven't made the playoffs in 12 years. So like, what would be positive?
That's great. The poor girl, she's just trying to do her job.
Yeah,
but it's tough. Funny. They put those guys and girls in a really, really tough spot. But man, it's another big offseason here. I feel like just last year it was, this is a huge Jets offseason. You maybe have the quarterback and you add some pieces and you have 2 top 10 picks. It's a big offseason. Then here we are again in 2023 with maybe the biggest offseason in the last few years.
Yeah, well, I mean, we talked last year. We talked last offseason. We talked during the year talking about the state of the Jets and everything else. I think we both agreed going into this past season, it was like you want to learn what you have in the quarterback and what you have in the coach. We learned we don't have a quarterback, but what is your impression of Saleh? Do we have the coach?
I think the jury's still out. I don't think we know. There's things that I really like about him. I think the players love playing for him. And I like his energy on the sideline. And I think he has to get more credit for the defensive turnaround. I don't think he gets enough credit for that. But at the same time, there are still the in-game management issues, which that bugs me. And sometimes how he talks with the media, there's a lot of like he handles himself well at times up there, but then with injuries, he's saying, "Oh, this guy will be fine," and next thing you know, Mekhi Becton's done for the year. Or with anything, you could pick out a ton of different examples with him. Speaking a little too soon on injuries, and it comes back to bite him. So, it's tough. I'm rooting for the guy. I think they do figure out quarterback, and they do make the playoffs next year. So I think both Douglas and Saleh are back in 2024. But again, this is a make or break year for both those guys, and I think they get. As we said already on the show, they gotta win.
Yeah, the Thursday night loss to the Jaguars drove me insane. Like the team coming out flat in that spot, coming out flat in Seattle, like things like that to me were inexcusable. Where I was like, dude, you're almost too much of a player's coach. Like this team was too relaxed. The sense of urgency wasn't there, and that's a young team. They're impressionable. Like they follow your lead. They didn't do it. Like this meltdown at the end of the season bothered me. So I'm like, all right, and that's you question him and the leadership within the locker room too. Like, are they going to turn it around? And I'm rooting for the guy. I like him. Like he does a lot of really good things. But these little things become red flags. You're like, all right, now I'm becoming concerned. But now he has, a much like a veteran coordinator that you need. Todd Downing's here too. So you have a lot of like a veteran presence on the offensive side of the ball, which should help him. So that excuse is gone. And you hope that they figure it out. And he's not too much of a player's coach. So I think that's my concern. But it'd be great to have a coach here for 10 years, right? It seems like every 3 years we're shuffling somebody out. It'd be nice to have somebody here.
I know, but that's the pushback that you get is, well, you got to have continuity, but what are you going to keep around the guy who can't do the job for 10 years also? Like it's, there's a lot of give and take with that, but it's, man, another big off season. Just wanted to thank you again for coming on with me. Where can people find your stuff if they want to watch the Let's Talk Jets and then also donate here?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me, man. I always love talking to you. I love your show. You do a phenomenal job, man. You're all professional and stuff. I gotta like be on my. I can't I don't curse or anything. Let's Talk Jets. We're on YouTube. I have a video on there about all the information. We have a link for T-shirts. We have a link for to donate. And then I'm at TRoush21 on Twitter. I have everything posted everywhere. So you follow us, you can check it out. We're uncensored. We're kind of crazy. We're not professional. We don't give you a lot of good stats, but we give you a lot of good arguments. That's how I can describe our channels. That's what we do.
I love it. Yep. I always tune in when I get the chance to. It's a fun time. So thanks again to Tyson for coming on. I'm Matt O'Leary. We'll talk to you next time.